The tyranny of what you see there is a prison that no one talks about, and nearly every person you have ever met is locked inside it. You cannot see the bars. You cannot touch the walls. There are no guards standing at the door. And yet this prison holds more people captive than every jail, every institution, every locked ward on this earth combined. Do you know what that prison is? It is your current circumstance. The job you hate. The bank account that makes your stomach tighten. The relationship that drains you. The diagnosis that terrifies you. The reflection in the mirror that makes you look away. Whatever it is, whatever condition you are living with right now that you did not choose, that you do not want, that sits on your chest every single morning when you open your eyes, that is your prison. And here is what makes it so diabolical. You built it yourself. Not intentionally, of course. No one chooses suffering on purpose. But you built it nonetheless, brick by brick, thought by thought, feeling by feeling. Every single time you looked at what was in front of you and said, this is real. This is what my life is. This is what I have to work with. You gave it your attention. You poured your emotional energy into it. You described it to your friends, rehearsed it in your mind, and confirmed it 1,000 times in quiet moments when no one else was watching. And in doing so, in that innocent, unconscious act of simply noticing what was there, you cemented it into place. You made it permanent. My friends, this is the great tragedy of human life. Not that we suffer, suffering comes and goes, but that we take hold of our suffering and water it with our attention until it grows roots so deep we believe we can never pull them out. Let me tell you something that may sound radical. Something that may challenge every instinct you have. Your current circumstances, every single one of them, are nothing more than the shadow of your former thinking. They are a printout, a receipt, a photograph of a moment that has already passed in the deeper layers of your mind. They are yesterday's thoughts made visible today. And if that is true, and I have spent my entire life proving that it is, then arguing with your circumstances is like arguing with yesterday's newspaper. It has already been printed. The ink is already dry. You are not going to change what is on that page by staring at it more intently, by worrying about it more fervently, by losing sleep over it more desperately. The page is finished. But here is the part that changes everything. The press is still running. Right now, in this very moment, your subconscious mind is setting the type for tomorrow's edition. And you get to decide what goes on that page, not by fighting what has already been printed, but by withdrawing your attention from it entirely and placing it somewhere else. This is what I call the reality override. And it is the most powerful ability you possess as a human being. Most people have never used it, not because they cannot, but because no one ever told them it existed. They were taught to be realistic. They were taught to face facts. They were taught that maturity means accepting your conditions and working within them. And so they spend their entire lives rearranging furniture inside their prison cell, never once realizing they could simply walk out the door. You see, the world has it exactly backwards. The world says, first change your conditions, then you will feel better. First get the money, then you will feel prosperous. First find the relationship, then you will feel loved. But this is a lie. The truth is the exact reverse. You must feel it first. You must become it first. In your inner world, in the sanctuary of your own imagination, before it can ever appear in the outer world. The feeling always precedes the fact. And the reason most people never experience this, the reason they stay trapped year after year, decade after decade, is because they cannot stop looking at what is. They cannot withdraw their attention from the evidence of their senses. They are hypnotized by their own circumstances. And what I am here to tell you, What I have come to share with you from the deepest place in my heart is that you can break free. You can withdraw your attention from what is and place it on what you intend to be. And when you do, when you make that shift, when you commit to it with everything you have, the entire fabric of your outer world will begin to rearrange itself to match. Not because you forced it, not because you manipulated anyone, not because you chanted some magic formula, but because that is the law. That is how consciousness works. That is how it has always worked. Your attention is the most sacred currency you possess. Where you spend it, you invest your life force. Where you invest your life force, you create your world. And right now, right this very moment, you are either building the life you want or reinforcing the life you want to escape. There is no neutral position. There is no standing still. Every thought is a vote. Every feeling is a seed. Every moment of sustained attention is an act of creation. So the question is not whether you have the power. You do. The question is, where is your attention right now, and do you have the courage to move it? The mind is not a mirror. It is a lamp. Something happens to us when we are very young, and it sets the course for everything that follows. We are taught by our parents, by our teachers, by every authority figure we encounter, to trust what we can see. Touch this table, it is solid. Look at that sky, it is blue. Feel this rain, it is wet. And from these early lessons, a belief takes root that goes so deep most people never question it. The belief that the world out there is the primary reality, and that your mind is simply a recording device, a mirror reflecting what already exists. This belief feels like common sense. It feels like wisdom. But it is the single most destructive idea a human being can carry. Because once you accept that your mind is merely a mirror, that it can only reflect what is already in front of it, you have surrendered your creative power entirely. You have made yourself a passenger in your own life. Let me offer you a different understanding. One that I have tested in my own life, in the lives of thousands I have counseled, and in the laboratory of daily human experience for over 4 decades. Your mind is not a mirror. It is a lamp. A mirror waits. It is passive. It can only show you what is already there. It creates nothing. It invents nothing. It is entirely dependent on what is placed before it. But a lamp is different. A lamp generates light. A lamp projects its own radiance outward. A lamp determines what is seen and what remains in darkness. The lamp does not discover reality. It reveals it. It selects it. Your conscious mind, my friends, is that lamp. And wherever you point it, whatever you choose to illuminate with the full force of your attention, that is what grows. That is what becomes real. That is what solidifies into form. Now, when I say this, I can already hear the objections. But Dr. Murphy, my problems are real. My debt is real. My illness is real. My loneliness is real. These are not things I am imagining. These are facts. And you are right. They are facts. I would never insult you by denying what you are experiencing. Your pain is real. Your struggle is real. Your struggles are absolutely, undeniably real. But here is what you must understand. They are real because they have already been created. They are the output, the finished product of a creative process that happened in your own mind before they ever appeared in your world. They are the harvest of seeds you planted, sometimes knowingly, often unknowingly, through sustained patterns of thought, feeling, and attention. The debt is real, yes, but it began as a feeling of lack. The illness is real, yes, but it was preceded by a pattern of fear, of tension, of chronic stress that impressed itself upon your subconscious mind day after day until the body had no choice but to express it. The loneliness is real, yes. But before the loneliness came the belief, quiet, constant, unexamined, that you were somehow unworthy of deep connection. These are not accusations. Please hear me clearly. I am not blaming you. Blame has no place in this conversation. What I am doing is showing you the mechanism. Because once you see the mechanism, once you truly understand how your attention creates your experience, you hold in your hands the key to every locked door in your life. Here is how it works. And I want you to listen to this carefully because this is not philosophy. This is mechanics. Your subconscious mind does not think. It does not reason. It does not evaluate. It does not say, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. It simply accepts whatever impression is given to it by your conscious mind, whatever thought or image or feeling you hold with sustained attention and emotional intensity, and it goes to work building that impression into your three-dimensional reality. It does this with absolute precision and absolute impartiality. Give it a picture of health, felt deeply and held consistently, and it will build health. Give it a picture of illness, felt deeply and held consistently, and it will build illness. It does not care which one you choose. It has no preference. It is a creative engine that runs on whatever fuel you feed it, and the fuel, the raw material, is your attention. When you give your attention to your current circumstances, when you observe them, describe them, worry about them, analyze them, complain about them, you are feeding those very circumstances back into the creative engine. You are saying to your subconscious mind, this is what I want more of. Build this, maintain this, keep this going. Not with your words, not with your conscious intention, but with the sheer force of your focused attention. This is why positive thinking alone does not work. You can repeat affirmations all morning long. I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am happy, and then spend the rest of the day staring at your bills, checking your symptoms, and feeling sorry for yourself. And your subconscious mind will ignore the affirmations entirely because they were just words. What it responds to is the sustained feeling, the dominant image, the habitual point of focus. You cannot trick your subconscious. You cannot fool it with slogans. It responds to what you actually feel, what you actually believe at the deepest level, what you actually give your attention to when no one is watching. And so the question becomes very practical, very concrete. If your subconscious mind is creating your reality based on what you give your attention to, then the single most important skill you can develop is the ability to control your attention, to point the lamp where you choose, to illuminate the scene you wish to live in, not the scene that currently surrounds you. This is not denial. This is not escapism. This is the deliberate act of redirecting your creative energy from the world as it is to the world as you intend it to be. Every great mystic, every great teacher, every great psychologist who has ever probed the depths of human consciousness has arrived at this same conclusion. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. Change the inner and the outer must follow, not as a matter of hope, not as a matter of faith, but as a matter of law. And the law operates through one mechanism above all others: attention. Your attention is the lens through which your subconscious receives its instruction. Point it wisely. The day I stopped believing my own eyes for years, I was no different from anyone else. Let me be honest about that. There was a time in my life when I was completely, hopelessly caught in the grip of circumstance. My early years were shaped by hardship, not the dramatic, cinematic kind that makes for a good story at dinner parties, but the slow, grinding kind. The kind that wears you down so gradually you do not even realize it is happening until one morning you wake up and you have forgotten what hope feels like. Growing up in Ireland, we did not have much. That was not unusual. Few families in our part of the country did. But poverty has a way of teaching you things that are very difficult to unlearn. It teaches you to expect less, to want less, to shrink your vision until it fits neatly inside the tiny box that the world has assigned to you. And I learned those lessons well, too well. By the time I was a young man studying for the priesthood, I had already built an invisible ceiling above my head. Oh, I was devout, deeply, sincerely devout. I loved God. I loved the scriptures. I loved the idea that there was something greater than this visible material world. But even in my devotion, I was still chained to the evidence of my senses. I still believed that reality was what I could see, touch, and measure. My faith was real, but it was a faith that operated within the boundaries of what seemed possible. And then something happened that shattered those boundaries forever. It was not a vision. It was not a miracle in the way most people understand that word. It was a conversation, a single conversation, with a man whose name I will carry with me to the last day of my life. He was a chemist, of all things, a man of science, and he told me something so simple, so devastating, so completely at odds with everything I had been taught, that it took me weeks to absorb it. He said to me, "Joseph, your problem is not your circumstances. Your problem is that you cannot take your eyes off them." That was it. One sentence. And it went through me like a blade, because he was right. Every morning I would wake up and immediately survey my situation. How much money did I have? Not enough. What were my prospects? Limited. Was my health strong? Barely. And with each survey, each inventory of lack, I was doing exactly what I have just described to you. I was feeding the image of lack back into my subconscious mind with all the force of genuine feeling. I was watering weeds and wondering why flowers would not grow. This chemist introduced me to a principle that would become the foundation of my life's work. He taught me that the subconscious mind does not distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a physically experienced one. To the subconscious, a deeply felt mental image is identical to a lived experience. It responds the same way. It creates the same outcomes. Now, think about what that means. If your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between what you are vividly imagining and what you are physically experiencing, then you are not limited to the reality in front of you. You are limited only by the reality within you. And the reality within you, the images you hold, the scenes you rehearse, the feelings you cultivate, is entirely under your control. When this understanding first took hold of me, everything I had assumed about the world suddenly looked different. The solid walls of my circumstances, which had seemed so permanent, suddenly looked like what they actually were: projections, shadows on a screen. The output of a machine that I had been operating unconsciously my entire life. And I realized, with a clarity that still takes my breath away when I think about it, that if I could learn to operate that machine consciously, if I could learn to withdraw my attention from the shadow on the screen and redirect it to the projector itself, I could change everything. So I began to practice, clumsily at first, inconsistently, with more doubt than conviction. Every morning, instead of opening my eyes and surveying my circumstances, I would lie still and build a scene in my mind, a scene of the life I intended to live. Not a fantasy, not a wild, ungrounded daydream, but a specific, concrete, sensory scene that implied the fulfillment of a deeply held desire. I would see myself in that scene. I would feel myself in that scene. I would hear the words being spoken, smell the air, touch the surfaces. I would make it vivid, make it real, make it more compelling than the room around me. And then, and this is the part that requires courage, I would get out of bed and walk into a day that looked nothing like my inner scene, and I would refuse to let the contradiction shake me. That was the hardest part, the refusal. Because everything you see, everything you hear, everything your senses report to you is screaming, this is real, this is true. Look at this, deal with this. And to stand in the middle of that storm and quietly say, no, I have chosen another reality and I will give my attention to that instead. That requires a kind of inner strength that most people do not know they possess. But they do possess it. You possess it. Every single one of you. The first time I succeeded, the first time a circumstance in my outer world shifted to match the inner image I had been holding, I wept. Not from relief, though there was that. Not from gratitude, though there was that, too. I wept because I suddenly understood something about the nature of this universe that was so beautiful, so elegant, so perfectly designed, that it overwhelmed me. I understood that we are not victims. We have never been victims. We are creators who have forgotten what we are. And from that day forward, my life's mission became clear: to remind people of what they are, to teach them the mechanics of their own creative power, to show them, not with theory, not with dogma, but with practical, demonstrable technique, how to withdraw their attention from the prison of current circumstances and redirect it toward the life they were born to live. The architecture of attention. Most people believe that attention is simple. You look at something and you are giving it attention. You look away and you are not. But this is like saying that electricity is simple because you flip a switch and a light comes on. The switch is simple, yes. But behind that switch is an extraordinarily complex architecture. Wires, circuits, generators, transformers, all working in concert to produce that single moment of illumination. Attention works the same way. What you experience as a simple act of noticing is, in truth, a deeply layered process involving your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your emotional body, your nervous system, and the fundamental creative intelligence that underlies all of existence. And when you understand this architecture, when you see how the pieces fit together, you gain the ability to use your attention with surgical precision instead of scattering it blindly. Let me walk you through it. At the top of the structure sits your conscious mind. This is the part of you that is aware right now. The part that is listening to my words, evaluating them, deciding whether they resonate. Your conscious mind is the chooser. It is the director. It decides moment by moment what to focus on. Think of it as the captain of a ship. The captain does not row. The captain does not maintain the engine. The captain does not navigate the currents. The captain simply points the vessel in a direction and says, go there. Below the conscious mind, far below, in the vast, dark, immeasurably powerful ocean of your inner world, sits your subconscious mind. And this is where the real work happens. Your subconscious mind is not a passive storage room for old memories and forgotten facts. It is a living, dynamic, ceaselessly active, creative force. It is building your reality every single moment of every single day, assembling circumstances, arranging encounters, governing your body, attracting conditions, all based on the instructions it receives from above. And the instructions it receives come in one form and one form only: feeling, not words, not affirmations, not vision boards on your wall. Feeling. When you feel something with depth and persistence, when you sustain an emotional state long enough for it to sink below the threshold of conscious awareness, it becomes an instruction to your subconscious mind. Build this, it says. Create this. Make this my experience. And your subconscious obeys. It always obeys. It has no capacity to reject an instruction that arrives with genuine feeling behind it. Now watch what happens when you fixate on your current circumstances. You look at your bank account and feel a sinking sensation in your stomach. That feeling, that specific, embodied, visceral feeling of lack, drops down into your subconscious mind like a stone into still water. Ripples spread outward. Your subconscious mind receives the instruction, there is not enough. Create more of not enough. And it goes to work. It arranges for the car to break down. It creates a situation at work where your hours are cut. It attracts an unexpected bill, not out of malice. Your subconscious mind has no malice. It is simply building what it was told to build. It is fulfilling the order you placed, not with your words, not with your intentions, but with your feeling. And the tragedy, the absolute tragedy, is that most people then look at the car breaking down and say, see, things are getting worse, and they feel even more lack. And that deeper feeling of lack goes down into the subconscious and produces even more scarcity. And the cycle tightens and tightens and tightens until the person is drowning in circumstances that they themselves are generating, believing all the while that life is simply unfair. This is what I call the attention loop. It is a feedback mechanism. Your outer world produces a feeling. That feeling impresses your subconscious. Your subconscious produces more of what matches that feeling. That new production triggers the same feeling again, often even stronger. And round you go, deeper and deeper into the groove, until the pattern feels as permanent and immovable as stone. But here is the truth that the loop conceals. It can be broken at any point at all. Because the loop depends on one thing and one thing only, your attention. The moment you withdraw your attention from the outer condition, the moment you stop feeding the feeling, the loop loses its fuel. It begins to slow. And if you are consistent, if you truly, genuinely redirect your attention to a new feeling, a new image, a new inner state, the loop eventually stops entirely, and a new one begins. This is not theory. This is mechanics. This is the engineering diagram of how your life works. Now, let me be clear about something important. Withdrawing attention does not mean denying reality. Denial says, this problem does not exist. Withdrawal says, this problem exists, but I am choosing not to feed it with my attention, because doing so only perpetuates it. Denial is rooted in fear. Withdrawal is rooted in understanding. But when you withdraw, when you calmly, knowingly redirect your focus, there is no resistance. There is simply a quiet turning of the lamp in a new direction. And in that simple, sovereign act, you have done more to change your circumstances than 1,000 hours of worry could ever accomplish. Think of your attention as a river. Right now, it is flowing toward a landscape you do not want. It is irrigating fields of fear, of doubt, of limitation. And those fields are flourishing because they are well watered. What I am asking you to do is redirect that river. Build a new channel. Let it flow toward the fields you actually want to cultivate. Health, abundance, love, purpose, deep and unshakable peace. The old fields will dry up. They have to. Without water, nothing grows. Without attention, no circumstance can sustain itself. This is the law, and the law does not make exception. The Art of Benign Neglect. Years ago, a woman came to see me who was in tremendous distress. Her marriage was falling apart. Her husband had become cold, distant, critical. The kind of slow erosion that does not happen overnight but accumulates over years like sediment in a river, until one day the water can no longer flow. She had tried everything: counseling, confrontation, pleading, silent treatments. She had read every book on relationships she could find. She had prayed desperately, fervently, with the kind of frantic energy that comes from someone who feels the ground crumbling beneath her feet. And nothing had worked. Nothing. If anything, her efforts had made it worse. The harder she tried to fix the marriage, the more her husband pulled away. When she sat across from me, her eyes were hollow with exhaustion. She asked me the question that so many people ask when they are at the end of their rope: what am I supposed to do? And I told her something that shocked her. Stop doing anything, I said. Stop trying to fix it. Stop analyzing it. Stop talking about it with your friends. Stop replaying the arguments in your mind. Stop monitoring his behavior for signs of improvement. Stop completely, totally, utterly giving this problem your attention. She stared at me as though I had suggested she jump off a building. But if I stop paying attention to it, she said, it will only get worse. No, I told her. It is getting worse precisely because you are paying attention to it. Every time you notice his coldness, you feel rejected. Every time you feel rejected, that feeling sinks into your subconscious and reinforces the pattern. You are pouring gasoline on a fire and wondering why it will not go out. What I taught her that day was what I call the art of benign neglect. And it is one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful techniques available to anyone who wants to change their circumstances. Benign neglect is not indifference. It is not apathy. It is not giving up. It is the deliberate, conscious, loving decision to stop feeding a circumstance with attention and emotion, not because you do not care, but because you understand the mechanics well enough to know that your attention is making it work. Think of a child throwing a tantrum. What does every wise parent know? That the worst thing you can do is give the tantrum your full attention. The more you react, the more you argue, negotiate, plead, or punish, the more fuel you pour into the behavior. The tantrum feeds on your response. It grows stronger with your engagement. But if you calmly, lovingly, firmly withdraw your attention, if you refuse to participate in the drama without abandoning the child, the tantrum runs out of fuel. It peaks, it subsides, it dissolves. Your circumstances work exactly the same way. They are demanding your attention. And every time you comply, every time you stare at the problem, analyze the problem, lose sleep over the problem, you are feeding the tantrum. Benign neglect says, I see you. I acknowledge you exist, but I am not going to give you my attention anymore. I am going to turn my inner gaze somewhere else, toward the outcome I desire, toward the feeling of resolution, toward the scene that implies the problem has already been solved. Now, practically speaking, how does one do this? Because I know that the concept sounds elegant, but the execution feels impossible when you are in the thick of it. When your bills are piling up, how do you not think about your bills? When your body is in pain, how do you not think about your pain? When your heart is breaking, how do you not think about the person who broke it? Here is the key. You do not fight the thought. You do not resist it. You do not try to suppress it or push it out of your mind. That approach never works. It only strengthens the thought by giving it the energy of opposition. Instead, you replace it. The moment you notice your attention drifting toward the unwanted circumstance, you gently, firmly redirect it to a predetermined mental scene. A scene that represents the fulfillment of your desire. Not in a frantic way, not with gritted teeth and clenched fists, but the way a loving parent gently takes a child's hand and leads them away from something dangerous, without drama, without punishment, without explanation, just a gentle, persistent redirection. You will have to do this many times, possibly hundreds of times in a single day at first. The old habit of attending to your problems is deeply entrenched. It has grooves worn into your neural pathways from years of repetition. It will not surrender easily. But every single time you redirect, you weaken the old groove and deepen the new one. Every single time, the new pathway gets a little easier and the old one gets a little harder. That woman I mentioned, the one with the failing marriage, she practiced benign neglect with a discipline that frankly astonished me. For 3 weeks, every time her mind turned to her husband's behavior, she redirected it to a specific scene. The two of them laughing together at dinner, looking at each other the way they used to, connected and warm. She did not try to change him. She did not confront him. She did not even bring up their problems. She simply withdrew her attention from the pattern of coldness and placed it on a pattern of warmth. Within a month, he began to change. Not because she manipulated him, not because she played some psychological trick, but because when she changed the dominant feeling within her subconscious mind from rejection to connection, the entire dynamic between them shifted. She was no longer broadcasting the signal of rejection. She was broadcasting the signal of love. And he responded to it. Because at the deepest level, that is what human beings do. They respond to the signal you are sending. Not the words you are speaking, not the actions you are taking, but the feeling you are living in. This is the art of benign neglect. Starve what you do not want, nourish what you do, and trust the law to handle the rest. The second body, living in your imagination right now, as you listen to me, you are sitting or standing in a particular location. You are surrounded by specific objects, specific sounds, specific temperatures. Your body is in a specific position. Your senses are reporting a specific version of reality. And you believe, because you have been conditioned to believe, that this is where you are. But what if I told you that you are simultaneously somewhere else? That at this very moment, another version of you exists in a reality that is just as vivid, just as textured, just as real, a reality that your physical senses cannot access, but your imagination can enter anytime you choose. This is not mysticism. This is not fantasy. This is the foundational truth upon which every great spiritual tradition in human history has been built. The ancients called it the astral body. The philosophers called it the ideal form. The psychologists call it the self-image. I call it the second body. And learning to live in it is the master key to the reality override. Your second body is the self you construct in your imagination. It is the you who already has what you want. The you who is already living in the conditions you desire. The you who walks through the scene of the fulfilled wish as naturally and effortlessly as you walk through your kitchen. Most people have a second body, but they do not know it. And worse, the second body they have unconsciously created is usually a body of fear. It is the version of themselves that gets the bad diagnosis, fails the interview, loses everything. Every time they worry, they are living in a second body of disaster, impressing it upon their subconscious with all the vividness of a lived experience. What I am asking you to do is something very specific. Build a second body deliberately, consciously, with intention and care. A body that represents the version of you who has already arrived at the destination you seek. Here is how you do it. First, you must get clear on what you want. Not what you think you should want, not what your parents want for you, not what society says is respectable or achievable. What do you actually want? If every obstacle were removed, if money were no object, if failure were impossible, What would your life look like? Be specific. Vague desires produce vague results. You cannot enter a scene in your imagination if the scene is blurry. You need detail, texture, color, sound, the feel of the chair beneath you, the quality of light in the room, the expression on the face of the person across from you. Second, construct a single scene, just one scene, that implies the fulfillment of your desire, not the process of achieving it, not the struggle of getting there, the end result, the scene after the wish has been granted. If your desire is financial abundance, do not imagine yourself working hard or negotiating a deal. Imagine yourself after, sitting comfortably, looking at a bank statement that makes you smile, hearing a friend congratulate you, feeling the deep, quiet satisfaction of a person who has more than enough. If your desire is health, do not imagine yourself receiving treatment or fighting disease. Imagine yourself after, running, dancing, climbing stairs without effort, hearing your doctor say, "I have never seen anything like this. Your results are perfect." If your desire is love, do not imagine the search. Imagine the arrival. The hand reaching for yours across a table, the sound of their laughter in the next room, the feeling of being utterly, completely known and cherished. Third, and this is where most people falter, you must enter that scene and live in it. Not watch it like a movie, not observe it from the outside. Enter it. Be the person in the scene. See through their eyes, feel through their body, hear through their ear. Make the scene first person, present tense, fully immersive. When you do this, when you truly, deeply enter the scene with all your senses engaged and all your feeling invested, something extraordinary happens. Your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between this imagined experience and a physical one. The same neural pathways fire. The same emotional responses are triggered. The same hormones are released. As far as your creative machinery is concerned, this event is happening to you right now. And because your subconscious mind builds your outer reality based on the impressions it receives, it now has a new set of instructions. Build this, the feeling says. This is what I am experiencing. This is my reality. And your subconscious begins to rearrange, to attract, to orchestrate, working behind the scenes in ways you cannot trace and do not need to understand, to bring your outer world into alignment with your inner experience. This is not a technique you do once. This is a practice you develop, a discipline you cultivate. Every day, ideally twice a day, in the morning when you first wake and at night as you fall asleep, you enter your second body. You live in it. You feel it. You let it become more real to you than the circumstances of your physical life. And over time, sometimes quickly, sometimes gradually, but always inevitably, the gap between your inner world and your outer world begins to close. The circumstances shift. The people change. The opportunities appear, not because you forced anything, but because you changed the blueprint. You gave your subconscious mind a new set of plans, and it is doing what it has always done, building faithfully according to the instructions it received. Your second body is not a dream. It is a blueprint, and the architect is you. When the world pushes back, now comes the part that no one wants to hear. The part that separates those who merely understand these principles from those who actually live them. Because I would be dishonest with you, deeply, unforgivably dishonest, if I told you that once you begin this practice, everything becomes easy. That the world simply parts before you like the Red Sea and your desired life appears without resistance. That is not what happens. Not at first. And you need to be prepared for what does happen or you will lose your footing at the most critical moment. Here is what happens. The world pushes back. When you begin to withdraw your attention from your current circumstances and redirect it toward the life you intend to live, your circumstances do not immediately change. In fact, and this is the part that breaks most people, they sometimes appear to get worse. The bills get bigger. The relationship gets harder. The symptoms intensify. The people around you become more critical, more skeptical, more insistent that you face reality, and everything inside you screams, "See, it is not working. You were a fool to try." Go back to being realistic. Go back to dealing with what is. This is what I call the bridge of incidents. The transition period between the old reality and the new one. And it is the most dangerous phase of the entire process because it is the moment when the vast majority of people give up. They give up because they misunderstand what is happening. They think the worsening circumstances mean that the technique has failed. But the exact opposite is true. The worsening circumstances are often a sign that the old pattern is dying. And dying things do not go quietly. They thrash. They convulse. They make one final, desperate attempt to reassert themselves before they are gone. Think of it this way. When you have been pouring water into a particular channel for years, feeding a particular set of circumstances with your attention, and you suddenly redirect that water to a new channel, the old channel does not dry up instantly. There is still water in it. There is still momentum. The remnants of the old flow continue to produce effects even after you have stopped. But those effects are temporary. They are the last echoes of a discontinued signal. They are the final frames of a film that has already been replaced on the projector. If you can hold your ground, if you can look at those worsening circumstances and say, "You are the shadow of a former thought, and I no longer give you my attention," they will pass. They must pass. They have no source anymore. This is where faith becomes operational. Not faith in the religious sense, though that is a beautiful thing, but faith as an internal commitment. Faith as the decision to trust the law over the evidence of your senses. Faith as the choice to remain in your second body even when your first body is surrounded by contradiction. Let me share something with you that may help during these moments of trial. When I was first practicing these principles, long before I had decades of evidence to support them, I went through a period of such intense contradiction that I nearly abandoned everything. My circumstances were getting darker, not lighter. My finances were dwindling. My health was fragile. People I respected were telling me I was wasting my life on fantasies. And one evening, in a moment of absolute despair, I said aloud, not to anyone in particular, just to whatever intelligence was listening, "If this is true, if the law really works the way I believe it works, then I will trust it completely. I will live in the feeling of my fulfilled desire, and I will let the world catch up in its own time." That was the turning point. Not because anything in my outer world changed that evening. It did not. But something shifted inside me. A resolve took hold that went deeper than mere determination. It was a kind of surrender, not to my circumstances, but to the principle. A willingness to be wrong. A willingness to look foolish. A willingness to stand alone in my conviction even if no one else could see what I could see. And within weeks, not months, not years, but weeks, things began to move. Opportunities appeared from directions I could not have predicted. Connections formed that I could not have engineered. Resources materialized that I could not have manufactured through effort alone. The outer world began to rearrange itself around the inner conviction I had planted. This is not unique to my experience. I have watched it happen hundreds of times, In my own life, in the lives of those I have counseled, in the great stories of human achievement throughout history, the pattern is always the same. The commitment comes first. The evidence comes second. The world always tests you before it rewards you. So when the world pushes back, and it will push back, do not mistake the pushback for failure. It is not failure. It is the final examination. It is the universe asking, do you really believe this? Do you really mean it? Are you committed to your new reality? Or will you crumble at the first sign of contradiction? Your answer, not in words, but in the quality of your attention, in the steadiness of your inner state, determines everything. Hold your ground. Stay in the feeling. Let the old world collapse around you if it must. Because on the other side of that collapse is a world you built with your own imagination, and it is waiting for you to walk into it. The stories of those who withdrew their gaze, let me tell you about a man named Robert. He came to one of my lectures in Los Angeles, not because he believed in what I was teaching, but because his wife had dragged him there. He sat in the back row with his arms crossed and a look on his face that said, "Prove it." Robert was an engineer, a practical man, a man who trusted calculations, measurements, things you could verify. And when I spoke about the subconscious mind creating reality, about imagination being more powerful than willpower, about the law of assumption, he thought it was nonsense. Complete, unscientific nonsense. But something I said that evening stuck with him. I said, you do not have to believe it. You just have to test it. Give it 30 days. 30 days of refusing to attend to your problem, and instead living in the feeling of your desired outcome. If nothing changes, you have lost nothing. But if something changes, even something small, then you know the law is real and you can never unknow it. Robert's problem was his career. He had been passed over for promotion 3 times. 3 times. A younger, less experienced colleague had been given the position he had earned, and Robert was consumed by it. He thought about it morning, noon, and night. He rehearsed the injustice in his mind. He analyzed what he should have said, what he should have done. He burned with resentment. And with each passing month, his work performance declined, not because he was less capable, but because his attention was so thoroughly consumed by bitterness that he could not bring his best self to anything. So Robert, grudgingly, skeptically, with the attitude of a man conducting a scientific experiment that he fully expects to fail, began the practice. Every morning and every evening for 30 days, he would close his eyes and construct a scene. The scene was simple. He was sitting in the larger office on the 4th floor, the office that belonged to the position he wanted, and his colleague was shaking his hand and saying, "Congratulations, you deserve this." He told me later that the first 2 weeks were agony, not because the practice was difficult, but because his circumstances were screaming at him. His boss was colder than usual. His colleagues were gossiping. There were rumors of layoffs. Everything in his outer world seemed to be moving in the wrong direction. But Robert held on. He kept entering the scene. He kept feeling the handshake. He kept hearing those words, "Congratulations, you deserve this." On the 23rd day, he received a phone call. The division was being reorganized. A new position was being created, one that did not exist before. And Robert's name had been recommended by someone 3 levels above his direct supervisor, someone he had never met, someone who had seen a report Robert had written 2 years earlier and remembered it. Within 6 weeks, Robert was in the 4th floor office, not the one he had imagined, a different one, 2 doors down. But the feeling was exactly the same. The reality was exactly what he had built in his mind. The details were different, but the essence, the feeling of recognition, of being valued, of finally occupying the position he knew he had earned, was identical. Let me tell you about another person, a woman named Grace, who lived in Chicago. Grace had been dealing with chronic pain for over a decade. Pain in her lower back that had been diagnosed, treated, medicated, operated on, and ultimately declared something you will have to learn to live with by 3 different specialists. Grace was not a spiritual person. She did not meditate. She was a school teacher who had spent 11 years in pain and had accepted that this was her lot. A friend gave her one of my books. She read it in 2 days. And the idea that struck her most forcefully was this, that the body is a printout of the subconscious mind, and that chronic conditions are often the physical expression of chronic mental and emotional patterns. Grace did not try to diagnose what emotional pattern had created her pain. She did not analyze her childhood or search for trauma. What she did was far simpler. She began every night before sleep to feel herself dancing, not watching herself dance, feeling herself dance, feeling her body move freely, fluidly, without restriction, without pain, feeling the joy of movement, feeling the music in her bones. She told me it felt absurd at first. She was lying in bed in pain, imagining herself dancing. The contrast between her inner experience and her outer condition was almost laughable. But she persisted, night after night, week after week, entering the feeling of freedom, of movement, of a body that worked beautifully. After 7 weeks, she woke up one morning and realized she had slept through the night without pain for the first time in years. She was so startled she did not trust it. She waited for the pain to return. It did not. Over the following months, her condition continued to improve. Not in a straight line. There were setbacks, flare-ups, moments of doubt, but the overall trajectory was unmistakable. Within 6 months, she was walking 3 miles a day. Within a year, she joined a dance class. Her doctor had no explanation. The structural issues in her spine had not changed on the imaging. The herniation was still visible, but the pain was gone. These stories are not miracles in the way that word is commonly used. They are the natural, lawful consequences of redirected attention. Robert withdrew his attention from resentment and placed it on recognition. Grace withdrew her attention from pain and placed it on freedom. And in both cases, the subconscious mind, that tireless, impartial builder, went to work constructing the reality that matched the dominant feeling. There is a man in New York who used this principle to reconcile with his estranged daughter after 9 years of silence. A woman in Dublin who used it to conceive a child after being told she never could. The stories are endless. The principle is always the same. Withdraw attention from what is. Live in the feeling of what you desire. Let the subconscious mind build the bridge. The midnight technique. Your nightly override of all the methods I have taught over the years, and there have been many. There is one that I return to more than any other. One that I consider the most potent, the most reliable, the most direct pathway to the subconscious mind. And it requires no special equipment, no training, no experience. It requires only a bed and a willingness to use the last few moments of your waking day with intention. This is what I call the midnight technique, though you do not need to wait until midnight to use it. The name refers not to the hour on the clock, but to the state of consciousness. The drowsy, drifting, half-awake state that occurs naturally as you fall asleep. The state that psychologists call the hypnagogic state and that I call the gateway to your subconscious mind. Here is why this state matters. Throughout the day, your conscious mind is active, analyzing, judging, filtering. It is a gatekeeper, and many of the impressions you try to plant in your subconscious are intercepted before they can take root. You affirm abundance, but your conscious mind whispers, "Really? With your bank account?" The gatekeeper stands between your desire and your subconscious. But in the drowsy state, in those moments just before sleep, the gatekeeper steps aside. The conscious mind relaxes. The critical faculty dims. And for a brief, precious window of time, you have direct access to the subconscious mind. Whatever you impress upon it in this state goes in deep. It goes in clean. It goes in without resistance or contradiction. This is why the thoughts and feelings you carry into sleep are so extraordinarily important. Most people do not realize it, but the last thing you think about before you fall asleep is the instruction your subconscious mind will work on for the next 6 to 8 hours. That is a third of your entire life. A third of your existence is spent with your subconscious mind actively building and reinforcing whatever impression you gave it at the threshold of sleep. And what do most people do with this sacred window? They worry. They review the problems of the day. They check their phones and flood their minds with bad news. They fall asleep marinated in anxiety, and then they wonder why they wake up feeling drained, why their problems seem to multiply. Here is the technique. When you lie down to sleep, let your body relax completely. Do not fight to stay awake. The drowsiness is your ally, not your enemy. Let yourself drift towards sleep, but before you cross the threshold, begin to construct your scene. The same scene you have been building in your second body. The scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire. But here, and this is crucial, do not merely visualize the scene. Feel it. Feel it as though it is happening right now. Feel the texture of the moment. Feel the emotion of the moment. If your scene involves someone congratulating you, feel the warmth of their hand, hear the sincerity in their voice, feel the swell of gratitude in your chest. If your scene involves holding someone you love, feel their warmth against you, smell their skin, hear their breathing. Make it real. Make it more real than the bed beneath you. Make it more real than the room around you. Let the scene absorb you so completely that for a few moments you forget where your physical body is. You forget your name. You forget your problems. You are there, you are in it, you are living it. And then, gently, naturally, without effort, fall asleep inside the scene. Let the scene be the last thing your mind touches before consciousness fades. Let it be the instruction, the blueprint, the command that your subconscious mind carries into the night. Do not worry if you cannot hold the scene perfectly. Do not worry if your mind wanders. Simply bring it back, gently, patiently, without frustration. The drowsy state is forgiving. Even a few seconds of deeply felt imagining in this state can produce profound effects. The key is repetition. Do this every single night. Not once. Not when you remember. Every night. Let the scene become as familiar to you as your own face. Let the feeling become as natural as breathing. Night after night, you are laying down track. You are pressing the image deeper and deeper into the subconscious soil. And at some point, the timing varies and you cannot control it or rush it. The seed will break through the surface and appear in your outer world. Some of you will experience results within days, some within weeks, some within months. The timing depends on many factors: the depth of your feeling, the consistency of your practice, the rigidity of your existing beliefs. But the result itself is inevitable. It is as certain as gravity. Plant a seed in fertile soil, water it consistently, and it will grow. That is not hope. That is horticulture. And here is something else I want you to understand about the midnight technique. It is not just a method for getting things. It is a method for becoming. Because as you practice, as you enter the feeling of your fulfilled desire night after night, you are not just impressing an image on your subconscious. You are changing your identity. You are becoming the person who naturally inhabits that fulfilled state. Your thoughts begin to shift. Your reactions begin to change. Your posture, your voice, your very presence begins to reflect the inner transformation. And when that happens, when the change becomes internal rather than merely strategic, the outer world does not just shift, it transforms. Because you are no longer a person trying to attract a different life. You are a different person, and your life is simply catching up. The new morning, walking into the world you built there, is a morning coming for you, and it may be closer than you think. When you will open your eyes and something will be different. Not different in a dramatic thunderclap way. Not different the way it happens in the movies, with swelling music and tears of joy. Different in a quiet way, a subtle way. The way dawn is different from darkness, not because of a sudden explosion of light, but because of a slow, steady, almost imperceptible brightening until suddenly you realize you can see. That morning, you will swing your legs over the side of the bed and place your feet on the floor, and the floor will feel different beneath them. Not the physical floor, the floor of your life, the ground you are standing on. You will feel it in your chest, a steadiness, a solidity, a quiet certainty that was not there before. And you will realize with the calm clarity of someone who has finally arrived after a long journey that your circumstances have changed, not because you fought them, not because you outworked them, not because you manipulated anyone or performed some trick, but because you changed the signal. You withdrew your attention from a reality you did not want and invested it patiently, persistently, lovingly in a reality you chose. And your subconscious mind, that faithful builder, did what it has always done. It built what you gave it. This is the morning I want you to hold in your mind right now. This is the scene I want you to carry with you when you leave this room. Not as a hope, not as a maybe, but as a certainty. Because if you practice what I have shared with you, if you genuinely, consistently, courageously withdraw your attention from what is and place it on what you intend, that morning will come. It must come. It is the law. But let me leave you with one final thought. One thing that I have learned in all my years of studying the mind and its powers, and it is perhaps the most important thing of all, this work is not about getting. It is about becoming. Yes, your circumstances will change. Yes, the money will come. The health will return. The love will arrive. The doors will open. But those things are not the point. They are the side effects. The real transformation, the one that matters, the one that endures, the one that no external event can ever take away from you, is the transformation of your own consciousness. When you learn to withdraw your attention from the tyranny of what is, you are not just changing your bank account or your body or your relationships. You are changing yourself. You are becoming a person who is no longer controlled by circumstances. A person who chooses their inner state deliberately and lets the outer world arrange itself accordingly. A person who has discovered through practice, through patience, through the quiet courage of sustained imagination, that the deepest truth of human existence is this: you are not in the world. The world is in you. Everything you see, everything you experience, everything you call my life, it is happening inside your consciousness. It is a projection of your own mind. And the projector is never broken. The projector is never limited. The projector can display any scene you choose, any scene at all, if you will only learn to change the film. So change the film. Withdraw your attention from the old picture. Stop describing it. Stop defending it. Stop explaining it to yourself and others. Let it fade. Let it dissolve. Let it return to the nothingness from which it came, and in its place build something beautiful. Build something worthy of you. Build something that when you walk into it on that coming morning will make you weep. Not from relief, though there will be that, but from the staggering realization that this was always available to you, that the power was always yours, that the only thing that ever stood between you and the life you desired was a simple, quiet, devastating habit, the habit of looking at what was instead of creating what could be. Break that habit. Break it now. Break it with everything you have. And step into the morning that is already waiting for you, the morning you built in your own imagination, with your own attention, from the depths of your own magnificent mind. Your reality override begins the moment you decide it does. And that moment, my friends, is now.